Hey y'all, today we're making regular and deluxe mac and cheese. Okay, so first up we're doing regular macaroni and cheese. So this will be like if you went and bought a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese, except it's going to be a whole lot better. So the first thing that we're going to do is get a little bowl and we're going to add all of our stuff that's going to make up our cheese packet, okay? So if you buy like macaroni and cheese at the store, it's just going to come with this, just plain cheddar powdered cheese, okay? But we're going to add some seasonings to it to make it better, and we're going to add some other dry stuff to make it pantry stable, where all we have to do is add water to it. So I added in 2/3 of a cup of cheddar cheese powder, and then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of this instant non-fat dry milk. You can use whole dry milk or whatever. I just have the non-fat, so that's what I'm using. So to this, I'm going to add in about 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper. Then we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of powdered, like ground mustard. It's not going to taste like mustard, I promise. Then we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, and then 1/2 teaspoon of paprika. This is going to make the equivalent of 2 boxes of macaroni and cheese. So however many servings your family gets out of a box of macaroni and cheese you buy at the store, that's how many servings that you'll get out of this. We're going to split this into 2 separate recipes, or 2 separate jars, so you'll get 2 boxes of macaroni and cheese. Just mix your powder up really good, and I find that, especially this cheddar cheese powder, it likes to clump up, and you know, I probably should have like maybe put it through my sifter or something, but I just wasn't that concerned about it. So I'll just kind of mix it up and then just chop it up with my tiny little whisk as good as I can. You don't have to get all the clumps out. So then I'm going to get my jars out. These are pint jars, and I am going to use elbow noodles, but you can use whatever kind of noodles you have. Just make sure there's something small because we need them to fit into the jar, okay? So we're going to add to each jar 1 1/3 cup of these elbow noodles, and I will link any of the cheese powders that I use in this video. I know some people have a hard time finding them or wonder where I get them from. I get them off of Amazon. I will link the ones I use down below for y'all if you can't find yours locally, okay? And then anyway, we're going to add our pasta, whatever pasta you're using. I'm obviously using the elbow noodles. You're going to add that to each one of your jars, okay? And because we're doing this like a box of macaroni and cheese, you know the powder comes separate, right? So what you're going to do is, I've got these bag holders. Y'all know, if you've ever watched me meal prep, or sometimes in the videos like this that I do, these shelf stable ones, I have to split things into, you know, little bags or whatever. These bag holders are fantastic. I said all that to say that. But anyway, I will also link these down below. Somebody always asks me where I get these from. I get them off of Amazon. I've never seen these at like the Dollar Tree or Walmart, but I've also never looked for them there. So maybe they do have them. Okay, so since we are making 2 separate jars, I'm going to just split my cheese powder into each jar. I didn't measure out exactly how much needed to go in each one. If you want to make a single jar of this, just half what I told you. And if you want to make more, just add ever how much more you need to make however many jars you want to add. These are great to have on hand. And like I said, it's like a box of macaroni and cheese, but the flavor is so much better because obviously we're adding some seasonings to these, but you can also add more seasoning to your macaroni and cheese when you cook it. So, and y'all know, anytime I do a video like this where I'm putting stuff together in a jar, I'm going to cook it for y'all, because I always, for me personally, if I'm watching a YouTube video, a cooking video, that is something like this, I want to see what it looks like when it's done. Like, because then that kind of is the test of whether I want to make it or not. And, just for myself. So I just always like to do that for y'all. So what you're going to do is get as much of the air out of these bags as you can. Just be careful, because if you squeeze the air out too fast, all that cheese powder will just puff up out of your bag and go everywhere. But you're just going to take your cheese packet, stick it right down on top of your pasta, and then we're just going to put the lid on these. And you can vacuum seal them if you want to. If you're going to store them for a long time, throw a little oxygen absorber in there with your cheese powder or whatever. Stick them on your shelf and use them whenever you want to. So to cook this, you're just going to cook this like if you were cooking a regular box of macaroni and cheese. So you're going to bring some water to a boil. I never measure how much water I boil noodles in, but you know, if you feel like you need to measure your water, then you absolutely can. Just look at a box of whatever pasta you used, and that'll tell you how long you need to cook it. I don't like my macaroni and cheese al dente. I know a lot of people do. I like my noodles cooked all the way. But do it however you want to, because it's your house and it's your macaroni. So you're just going to add your, remove your cheese packet, obviously. Add your noodles to the water, and then let them cook until they're done. And I always lay a wooden spoon across the top of mine, because it has a tendency to boil over. And if you do that, it won't bubble over. So for our cheese packet, now you can just add your cheese and stuff directly to your macaroni right here. But because we had some rather big clumps in the cheese powders, I decided to mix mine in a bowl first, just to try to get the bigger clumps out. So right here, I added in 2 tablespoons of butter. Now, I drained my noodles, but I reserved about a half a cup. I have a big bowl of it, but you're going to need about a quarter to a half a cup of that pasta water. Now, in all my infinite wisdom, I thought I had a 1/4 measuring cup, and I had a 1/2 measuring cup. So I used way too much water right here. The correct measurements are in the description box for y'all. You need about a quarter of a cup. If you make a box of macaroni and cheese, you add 1/4 of a cup of milk and 1/4 of a cup of butter. Okay, so 1/4 of a cup is pretty much what you would need for this, but I added a little too much. I wanted to leave it in here just to show y'all. And if you forget to reserve your pasta water, you can just use regular water out of the faucet too. So 2 tablespoons of butter into your noodles, and I just let that sit over there and melt while I'm mixing my cheese up. If you have powdered butter or butter powder, you can use that instead of regular butter when you cook it. You can put that right into your cheese packet. So once you get your cheese all mixed up, you're going to stir that into your noodles. Now you see how much extra liquid I have? Because I added too much, okay? I ended up adding like 3/4 of a cup, 3/4 of a cup, instead of the 1/4 cup that I should have added. Mistakes happen in the kitchen, and it's going to happen to the best of us. Not that I'm the best of us, but y'all know what I mean. If you end up with too much liquid, stick it back on the stove, turn your burner on, and stir it until it absorbs the liquid. It'll only take a minute or two, and then you'll have perfect macaroni and cheese. So ideally, we would have had less liquid, and it would have mixed right in, and we would have been done. But if you need to do this, that's okay too, okay? So next up, we're going to do the Deluxe macaroni and cheese. So this is going to be like your Kraft Deluxe or your Velveeta shells and cheese. Like that's what this is going to be, okay? So what we're going to add to our bowl is 1/2 cup of powdered milk, or milk powder, whatever you call it. Then we're going to add some cheese powders. And some sour cream powder, obviously. So we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of sour cream powder. And again, I will link all these down below for y'all. The reason I did both of these is because I know a lot of y'all are not going to have all of these powders to make this deluxe version, but you would probably have the stuff you need to make the regular version. But if you wanted to elevate it, take it up a notch, I'm also going to give you this deluxe version, okay? So now I'm adding in 2 tablespoons of cream cheese powder. Then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese powder. This is going to be quite cheesy and delicious, y'all. My son ate this. He tasted this first, and he said this is way better than the box stuff. So, it's pretty good if you ask me. So now we're going to add in here 2/3 of a cup of the cheddar cheese powder. And again, this is like the first one. This is going to make 2 boxes. Okay, we're going to put them in jars, but the equivalent of 2 boxes of the like shells and cheese or the deluxe mac and cheese, okay? So now we're going to add in a little bit of seasoning. We're going to add in about half a teaspoon of salt or quarter teaspoon of salt, about a quarter teaspoon of pepper. That's 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. You're going to add in a half of a teaspoon of paprika. And then I'm going to add a half a teaspoon each of onion and garlic powder. And if you had the butter powder, you would add it at this point, okay? 2 tablespoons if you have butter powder. If you don't, then just add in 2 tablespoons of butter when you cook it, okay? And I did forget to show y'all me adding the butter in this recipe when I cook it, but just know I did add 2 tablespoons of butter, okay? So now we are going to measure out our pasta. We're going to use a tiny bit less in these than we used in the other because we're going to cook it a little bit different. You're going to see in a minute. So to each of our pint jars, we're going to add 1 1/4 cup of the elbow noodles. You can also use the little mini shells if you want to, or whatever pasta you have, as long as it's something that's small that we can fit enough of it into these jars, okay? And this one, we definitely do have to separate. I mean, we definitely don't have to separate the cheese powder because we're going to cook this all at one time. But again, because, you know, for clumping reasons and my own issues, I am going to put it in little bags, but you don't have to. You can dump all the cheese stuff right down into the jar for this because the whole thing is going in at once. We're not cooking the noodles separate, okay? But, you know, again, I did do it separately, but in the recipes that I linked below for y'all, I did tell you both ways, okay? They're both on there, so you'll know, you know, that you can do it either way. So now I'm just doing the same thing I did with the other one. I am going to just evenly divide my cheese powder into each of my little Ziploc bags. And you will notice with this one you have not a significant amount more, but you do have a bit more of the cheese powder than you do with the first recipe because we put more in this one. So just know that going in that it is going to be a little bit of a squeeze to get this one into your jar. So make sure that you get as much air out of these bags as you can, okay? They're going to fit, but they're going to just fit. They're going to just fit in here, okay? So squeeze the air out, and then we're going to put those right there into the top of our jars. And the same thing with the other ones. You can vacuum seal them. You can add an oxygen absorber. You can do whatever it is that you like to do when you store things for long term. If you're just going to have them on the shelf for a little while, you know, a month or two or something like that, then you don't need to do all that. They're going to be just fine. So just, like I said, see how full they are? Just add that to your jar, pop the lid on there, and then those are good to go. So now we have 2 regular macaroni and cheese jars and 2 deluxe macaroni and cheese jars, okay? So to cook this one, like I said, it's going to be a tiny bit different than the other one. So we do need to measure the water for this one. You're going to need 2 3/4 of a cup of water. So 2 cups plus 3/4 of a cup. Put that into your pan, and then you're going to add in the packet of cheese. If you have it all in your jar, just dump your whole jar in there. I just like to be able to stir the cheese a little bit before I add the pasta in there so I don't end up with big clumps of cheese. Honestly, usually the little clumps break up anyway as they heat, so it probably isn't an issue. But y'all know I'm a bit extra, so that's why I do it separate. But you don't have to. But you're going to add your water, and then you're going to add the contents of your jar, whichever way you want to add them in there. You're going to add all the cheese stuff, and you're going to add the noodles in there. You don't have to bring it to a boil first, okay? There we are dumping our noodles in. You're going to mix that up, let it come to a boil, okay? Once it comes up to a boil, you're going to cut your heat down to a simmer, and then you're going to let this simmer for about 15 minutes or so, or until the liquid is absorbed and your noodles are done. But you see how much creamier that looks right there? It's all those cheese powders and stuff that we added in there. This is so good, y'all. So like I said, just keep cooking it until your noodles are done. This is what the deluxe mac and cheese looks like. You see how creamy the sauce looks? That's how you know this one is the deluxe. And you can see our seasonings on there. And then this is your regular macaroni and cheese. It is also creamy, by the way. It just doesn't have as much of a creamy sauce to it. So I hope that y'all will try these. That is all I have for y'all today, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.